Hello everyone, this is Rob and welcome back to Media Awareness, or welcome to Media Awareness if this is your first time seeing me. This is a Patreon exclusive video, so thank you for joining and I hope that you enjoy this video. If you would be so kind, there will be a link to my YouTube page. You can go there and check out the other videos I posted over the past few months and see the content that is there. You could also get ideas for requests that you'd like to make of me for videos you'd like to see. This video itself, incidentally, is a special request from an anonymous individual who asked me to review and do a ranking of the Journey discography, which is quite lengthy, but I figured it's someone asking, so I'm going to I'm going to grant that wish, and I'm going to do so on Patreon as my very first Patreon video. So, thank you for that request, and thank you for joining Patreon and watching this particular video. Just for future reference, I do hope to add more interesting content to my Patreon. I'm looking into lining up interviews with some musicians in addition to other notable individuals in the world today. So, Journey has had a long career, almost 50 years now. It is 2022. The band was founded and in 1973, and there is a lot to cover. I'm going to be giving my reasoning for these rankings, and some of it you may not necessarily agree with, and some you might. However, I have a feeling this video and my ranking is going to be somewhat controversial, but that's what the internet's all about these days. So let us get started on this ranking, and I will give you my little tidbits of why I have ranked these albums as such. Starting at the, well, at the bottom, really, as far as albums that did not necessarily strike my fancy, so to speak. The first album on my list is the Journey album Next. It is their third studio album, copyright 1977. And this album, no matter how much I listen to it, it does nothing for me. It was sort of in that time frame of when the band was attempting to become more commercial, yet they were still hanging on to their fusion slash progressive roots. And it was sort of a tug of war, if you will, creatively, in terms of the band's makeup and their overall presentation. So this album, it sounds like an average 70s rock album that any band could have put out. Nothing stands out for me on this album at all. So that's why it is the last, or in this case, worst. But like I said, Journey doesn't have any bad albums. So, but this is at the bottom of my list as my least favorite Journey album. This is followed by Generations. Oh God. Generations, this album had so much potential, and the concept had so much potential. This was released in 2005. has a couple good songs on it, but it really doesn't do anything as far as standing out in the catalog. Faith in the Heartland is a great song, but for Generations, I would have liked to have seen that tour. My understanding is it was a 2 to 3 hour tour show with the intermission, and they did songs from every period of the band's career. That would have been interesting to see, and also to see a video of. However, the album it had potential. You could have easily uh, brought Greg Rowley back and had him do a duet with Steve Jerry, who is then the current singer of Journey. And it would have been like 70s Journey. Or have him do a song by himself and have it be progressive oriented. It could have been that. You could have had Steve Perry and Jonathan Cain and Neil Sean write a song together and record it and put it on this album. It doesn't mean they ever have to perform it live. It just means that people would go crazy because it would have been this sort of trilogy dream team of writers creating what could have been possibly a hit single. We don't know because it was never done. Whether it was attempted or not, I don't know. But what we received as fans was the current lineup of Journey at that time, basically with each individual contributing their own vocals to individual tracks. And not all of it works. So that's why Generations is so low on my list. Now, the next several entries are going to be somewhat controversial, and that's why we're all here online. So, without hesitation, I'm going to go with the next entry on my list of worst to best, and that is the album Infinity from 1978. I know you're all gasping and like, oh my god, why? This album is a good album. What really bothers me about this album is the song order. In other words, the way the songs are arranged on the album and the order they fall. Yeah, an album that starts out with Lights is not going to get my attention. If it started out with Wheel in the Sky, that would have got my attention. But Lights is a ballad. And when it kicks in, yeah, it may grab you, but not as the first song on an album. I do realize this album was hugely successful for Journey and actually saved their career and put them on the pop rock map as well as contemporary rock. But for me, the album just didn't do it. If the song order was different, I think it would have been a more a more likable album for me. But because of the song order, it just doesn't, it falls short, in my opinion. And the next one is also going to get under a lot of people's skin. I know this album is a lot of people a lot of people's favorite out of the Journey catalog, and that is 1980's Departure. This album, and I tried to like this album, and this was my third Journey album. I bought Raised on Radio, Escape, and then Departure. I thought, oh, any way you want it, kicks it off. It's going to be a great album from there. And the only way I could describe this album to someone who hasn't heard it, or even someone who has, as from my perspective, it suffers from a severe identity crisis. It doesn't know what it really wants to be. It has the pop rock elements. It has progressive elements. It has some blues on it, and it's just too all over the place. And it's not all over the place in a good way. It's if it was structured, and it goes back to album structure again. I think if the album was structured differently, it may have hit me a little differently. But in this case, I just did not like Departure at all. Let's see here on the list. I made a cheat sheet just so you guys are aware. Let's see here. Alright. Next one, this is where they start to get better for me. Evolution from 1979. Evolution is an album that I purchased initially a cassette from a pharmacy from the discount bin. I remember that vividly. Um, and this album has a lot more tangible, really great songs in my opinion. City of the Angels is on here. Too Late. Love and Touch and Squeeze, and of course, which was the main hit on this album. But this album really, it stood out more for me as being a great album as opposed to Infinity and Departure. The only complaint I have with this one again is the running order of the songs. It starts out with this great intro and then goes into a ballad, which is Too Late. And I'm not sure if they're trying to follow the formula that was established on Infinity, being that that was a previous album as far as releases, but it just didn't, that aspect of it didn't work for me. The songs, though, I feel were better in terms of composition and performances. Okay, next on the Journey list. Let's see. We have the 1975 self-titled album. As I mentioned, Journey was founded in 1973, but it wasn't until 1975 that they recorded their first studio album. And this album is another one that I picked up at the pharmacy, same pharmacy actually. I went there a lot. And they had this album in the bargain tape bin. And I didn't have it, and it was Journey, so I bought it. And I really liked it. I liked the progressive aspects of it, fusion aspects of it, and really it connected with me. And in a different way from Evolution, it was more of a sit back, relax, and just kind of chill out to this long form music, as opposed to a somewhat accessible pop rock experience. This was more exploratory, but I loved it. Absolutely loved it. So that was the self-titled Journey album, 1975. Next on my list is 2011's Eclipse. The second album to feature Arnel Pineda on lead vocals. And I do think this is a great album. It has some great songs on it. And the production is really in your face, like really out in front. It's great sounding album. It's just uh, I really can't say anything bad about this album. It just did not rank as higher as other ones did for me. I love it. It's a great album, but some of the other ones that are higher on my list are higher for reasons, obviously. And they're albums I revisit more than I do Eclipse. So, next we have, let's see here, Arrival from 2001, I believe. Yes. And I actually combined this with Red 13, the EP that followed Arrival, because they are both phenomenal. I remember when this album came out, I was working for the county mental health system, and I had a friend at work who was a music lover as well. And he asked me if I'd heard the new Journey album. I didn't know it was out. And and I said, no, I haven't. What's it sound like? Stupid question to ask. It sounds like Journey. So on my lunch break, I hit the bank, pulled some money out, ran down to Midtown Village, which was an area in Wilkes-Barre that had a location of the Gallery of Sound, John Radone's Gallery of Sound, the only place that you should shop for records in northeastern PA. That location is no longer there, but it was back in 2001. And I grabbed my copy of Arrival and I went home after work, and I was blown away. I was, the magic had been not recaptured because it was never lost at that point, but in my opinion, it was extended. It was passed on to another incarnation of Journey, with Steve Algeri making his album debut on this particular album. And it's a great album. There's nothing bad to say about Arrival. So, let's see what's next on the list. Trial by Fire from 1996. This album is also a great album. It's also the last Journey studio album to feature Steve Perry on lead vocals. This was also, incidentally, the album that Steve Perry rejoined Journey for and brought the Escape and Frontiers lineup back together to record for a massively planned tour, which never happened due to Steve's injuries at the time while preparing for the tour. So, Trial by Fire is a great album. And if it has any drawbacks, it's the fact that there are too many songs on this album. Just too many songs. Back in the mid to more so, yeah, mid to late 1990s, I'd say, bands were really making the most of the CD format and putting all these songs on these discs as opposed to just 10 or 12 songs. And I think that really killed this album for me because it was too much of a good thing. Yeah, and there were no bad songs. That's really the quandary there. Um, but it was hard to sort of say, well, I like this song or that song better than this one. Uh, it's an album that I've revisited a lot recently, and I love it. I just think that for the time, it was a bit too much of a good thing. And I wasn't sure how to adjust to that then. And now I'll listen to a song or two and I won't even remember this song until I'm halfway through it and be like, oh yeah, this is that song. This is a great song. But it's because there are so many songs on the album that happens, in my opinion at least. So that was 1996's Trial by Fire. Let's see. The next one on the list is 1976, Look into the Future. And I realize I'm all over the place in terms of years on these albums. But this is the order that I like the albums in. Like I said, this is all opinion based. So I hope you're enjoying this very diverse mixture of years and albums and reasonings behind these albums. Look into the Future was an album that I bought at, where did I buy it? I saw it at a record store. I don't remember which one, but it was $5 or $6.99, and I thought it's Journey. I don't have it. I'm buying it. So I did, and this was actually like my full fledged in introduction to Greg Raleigh. This was my first exposure to Greg Raleigh singing by himself on a Journey album. After this album, I purchased Infinity and Evolution. I had already heard Greg on Departure, but to hear him sing on every song on the album was a new experience for me. And it was a more progressive journey, a more fusion based journey. And I love the tracks on this album. They are just phenomenal. And they have these great hooks and great arrangements and just sprawling solos, and it's a phenomenal album. And I highly recommend it. If you can overlook the fact that you're not going to hear an ounce of Steve Perry on this album at all, because this was prior to his joining the band. The next album on my list is 1983's Frontiers. Frontiers is an album that I bought very late in my Journey collecting days. And that's by like a year, because when I got in the Journey and was buying the CDs and tapes, I was buying whatever I could find when I found it. And Frontiers I just never bothered to pick up and never saw. And then I saw it one day on TV. I grabbed it, and separate ways catches your ear as soon as you hear it. And those thundering drums kick in. With that said, though, I do I do feel that the production could have been heavier. The drums could have been heavier. And that is probably my only gripe regarding this album is the production on it. The songs are phenomenal for the most part. There are a few duds in my opinion, which is why this album is where it is on my list. But the title track is amazing, very progressive. Separate Ways, of course, Under My Love, Faithfully, Edge of the Blade. Chain Reaction is a song I could do without, and it's a song that, for me, it sounded like filler first time I heard it. And then I realized that it was actually a single, and I was really confused by that because it really didn't seem like single material. But hey, whatever. For those of you who do not or did not own these original discs or are streaming these albums on Spotify, I'm going by the original discs, not what was remastered and currently available. So songs like Only the Young, which appear on the special edition version, Ask the Lonely, Only Solution, those were not on the original album release. So that's what I'm going by as the original album release, even though I own all the remasters. So that's Frontiers. And one song that I could definitely do without is Back Talk. I don't know why that song is even a thing, but it does nothing for me. And the drums sound great on it. They could sound better with a different production sound. And a stronger, more solid snare, in my opinion. But I'm really production oriented, audio obsessive, if you will. Let's see here. Ah, yes. 2008's Revelations. This album, from beginning to end, is a masterpiece. I cannot say enough good things about Revelations. I was fortunate enough to see this tour when it hit my local area, and I did one of my first YouTube videos on this tour because I had some problems at the venue with security. But this album, just as soon as I put it on, it was the first album to feature Arnell on lead vocals. And as soon as you hear him start singing, you realize you're listening to something great. You're listening to something that is historic and that is a phenomenal Journey album. Moving along, we have Journey Escape 1981. Much like Frontiers, there are a couple songs I could do without. But for the most part, Escape has a lot more material that I do enjoy. You know, obviously, Don't Stop Believing, Stone in Love, Keep on Running, Still They Ride, the title track, Escape, Mother Father. These are all great songs. Open Arms. This album really has a good steady pace to it, and it's arranged very well. The production, once again, though, is my problem. And in this particular case, I feel that the drums sound very weak for material that is so strong. I mean that in all due sincerity. On a song like Escape or on a song like Keep On Running or even Stone in Love, I would expect to hear kind of thundering drums. Yet I hear this really soft snare drum. And it bothers me. It really bothers me. Other than that, the material is just phenomenal. And it's an album that I really covet in my collection. So, then we have, getting close to the home stretch here. Um, Journey's newest album from 2023, 2022. I'm a year ahead of myself. 2022, July of 2022 to be exact. Journey's album Freedom. Which was the initial title for their album Raised on Radio. This album is a great album. Freedom has a few too many songs like Trial by Fire, but the songs tend to stand out more, in my opinion, personally. They're all very diverse. Trial by Fire had a lot of similar sounding songs, whereas Freedom has more diversity. And I think that personally it helps the overall delivery of the album from a sonic perspective. The production on this album does vary from track to track. And that's the only complaint I have. Some songs sound better than others. And I'm not sure why. I do know the album was recorded during COVID, during isolation. Yet I've heard other albums that have amazing production sounds that were recorded at the same time as that. So I don't know why some sound different than others, but Freedom is a fantastic album. And if you have not heard it, check it out. So, next on my list, we're in the top three. The first, of course, the third from the top was Freedom. This is followed by, let's see here, 1980s Dream After Dream. Released the same year as Departure, yet after Departure. This was sort of the segue album, for me at least, from the initial Journey era with Greg Rowley to the Steve Perry era exclusively. And it's it's a soundtrack, but it is a soundtrack that stands on its own without the movie that accompanies it. And there are only three tracks that contain vocals, but they are phenomenal tracks. They are worth finding, and it is just a phenomenal album. Plus, for those of you who are diehard Steve Perry fans, you'll want to pick up this album in some way, shape, or form because you're missing out on some amazing Steve Perry performances on this particular album. Now, I will caution you, I have not found a remastered version to my knowledge of this. I have a standard CD version, and there are a lot of misconceptions about this album that I pointed out in a video on YouTube on this album. One of those misconceptions is that the album was never available in the US. It was. I bought my cassette copy at a department store. And that's a true story. I remember distinctly being at the Boscov's department store, which is a local chain in my area. And it wasn't the local store, it was a one that was a few towns away. And I saw this album, thought the cover was gorgeous, and I was blown away by the material. It was Progressive Journey with Steve Perry singing lead. Amazing, amazing album. And let's see here. Number one in my top Journey albums is Journey Raised on Radio from 1986. Now, I've done a previous video on YouTube on this album, so I'm not going to rant too much, but a lot of people tend to categorize this album as Steve Perry's second solo album because he produced it and he insisted on a different rhythm section from Frontiers and Escape. And when I looked at the credits of this album, I saw that Neil Sean, Jonathan Cain, and Steve Perry, for the most part, wrote or co-wrote all the songs together. And that says a lot to me. I think that the production on it is amazing. There's a strong snare. The bass stands out more than ever before. And it's mixed very, very well. It has a really nice, clean production sound without sounding too clean and too sterile. So, yes, we have reached the end of my Journey Studio discography worst to best countdown. Even though I've stated previously at the beginning, there are no bad Journey albums. I hope that you all have enjoyed this ranking of Journey's discography, their studio discography. If anyone would like me to do a ranking of their live discography, which is considerably shorter, I will do so. Or any of the solo members for that matter. Steve Perry, The Storm, even Greg Raleigh for that matter. I will happily do a ranking of those individuals' solo work. But for now, I hope you have enjoyed this first Patreon video officially. And I hope that you also will check out the accompanying YouTube channel for my Journey retrospectives that are there, as well as other Journey related material. This is Rob with Media Awareness, and thank you for watching. I will see you all soon with something great and interesting, just not sure what yet. It all depends on you guys. Send me your requests, and I will do my best to honor them. Have a great night. Bye.